Joining us for Food for Thought, our lunchtime information sessions. We'll be doing these once a month. So this is our first one, October 2022, and the topic for today is qualified expenses, invoicing, and payments. I'm Jackie Guglielmo. I'm the executive director, and I will be doing some of these food for thoughts, but the majority of my team will also rotate in and be able to present on a provided topic. We encourage families to submit all questions ahead of time, providers as well. So we're going to go over that in housekeeping and important points and reminders. So food for thought sessions are scheduled from 12 to 1, so right at that lunchtime hour, but please feel free to come and go as needed. So if you're logging on a little bit late, if you need to hop off a little bit early, that's fine. All questions must be submitted ahead of time. We are not doing a live chat or Q&A to be respectful of everyone's time and to be respectful of everyone's privacy as well, since this will be a recorded session. We know sometimes people tend to share personal stories or personal information, and we just want to make sure that that's left private. So any questions will come to us ahead of time. We'll be happy to answer them during the session on recording. And then go ahead and advertise that on our website. We also remind everyone to please remain muted throughout the presentation. Sometimes there can be some background noise or some phones ringing, and that can prove to be a distraction for everybody listening. So we just ask that you stay muted. Your camera can be on or off. That doesn't matter to us. So today I'm going to review information about qualified expenses, the invoicing process, and making payments through ClassWallet. Just a reminder of the definition of a qualified expense. It refers to the following expenses provided by a participating entity. So that's a provider that's already been approved to participate in the ESA program, related to the education of an eligible student for which scholarship money in an account may be used. I'm going to do a brief overview of all the different types of qualified expenses that ESA funds can be used to pay for. So this can be tuition and fees at a qualified school, public school, or other participating entity. And if you need a reminder about what a qualified school is, that can be found in the parent handbook. You'll also note at the bottom of the screen, I've indicated the chapters of both the parent and the provider handbook that this information can be found in. So if you wanted to reference that at a later time or use it as a supplement to the information that's going to be dispersed in this presentation, you can do so as well. Just look at the bottom of the screen for the reference to the chapter. Next is fees for national norm referenced or criterion referenced exams, and there's a couple different types of those. Educational services for an eligible student who is a student with a disability. Now you'll see here there's a unique icon in the corner. It's a little computer screen. And down here at the bottom, you'll note it states qualified expenses indicated with a computer icon may be virtual or distance learning services. So that's anything that can be accessed virtually and be paid for with ESA. The next type of qualified expense is payments associated with paraprofessionals or educational aides. Services contracted for and provided by a school corporation, so that's a public school, charter school, magnet school, or qualified school. And you see that there's a little kind of connector here. So that means that these two boxes are connected. And this includes individual classes, extracurricular activities or programs, or additional programs, resources, or staffing that's in the student's IEP or service plan. Occupational therapy provided in accordance with the IEP or service plan. And you'll note that that also has a little computer screen icon as that can be accessed virtually. Fee-for-service transportation is a $750 cap, which a family can apply for a waiver of that monetary cap. But fee-for-service transportation is going to be to and from an approved provider through a transportation company. So at this time, our program does not allow for reimbursement of driving costs from families. It would have to be a third-party transportation company. Next is tuition and fees to attend training programs or camps that have a focus on, and you'll notice this connector again here, vocational skills, academic skills, life skills, independence or soft job skills that are character traits, and interpersonal skills. So if a training program or camp were looking to apply as a provider in the ESA program, they would have to have skills that are focused in one of these areas. We also see that there's a little computer here. So those training programs or camps can be accessed virtually. And then we have the last piece here, additional services and therapies prescribed by the eligible student's treating physician, in addition to any services currently being provided by the school insurance or Medicaid program. So what this means is if a service or therapy is not included in the student's service plan or IEP, but a family is wishing to use ESA funds to pay for it, they can take that information to their student's treating physician and get a prescription for that service or therapy if the physician feels that it would be beneficial to the student's access of their academic or education-related experience. And then that prescription can be uploaded into our system, and that service or therapy would then become a qualified expense for that student. Now we're going to talk about ClassWallet. Now, for everybody that's been approved in the ESA program, whether you're a family or a provider, you should at this point be familiar with the ClassWallet platform. They are our account management partner, meaning that this platform, it's a virtual platform and it houses all ESA student accounts. It's where all transactions will need to take place. So both parents of ESA students who've been approved and providers who've been approved must register with ClassWallet prior to being able to use the platform. So soon after being approved through our system, we send the information of all approved parties over to ClassWallet, and ClassWallet sends an email directly to those providers or families with some specific registration details about what onboarding will look like. And again, at the bottom of the page, you can see that more information about ClassWallet can be found in Chapter 5 of the Parent Handbook and Chapter 6 of the Provider Handbook. Sorry, some of these photos are a little blurry, but these are all of the ClassWallet resources that they have to offer. So if a family is having a question about logging in, access to their account, something's not working right in the platform, we ask that you contact ClassWallet directly with those types of questions. If it's a question of you think that your balance is incorrect, that's something that would come to our ESA team. But if it's a matter of an invoice question or a balance or you can't get set up, those questions can be directed to ClassWallet. They have pretty robust customer support services. So there are on-demand videos and here a knowledge base article system for those that feel empowered to try to troubleshoot themselves. The videos, I will say, are very user-friendly, very easy to understand, as are the articles. They really are a step-by-step instructional guide, including photos and everything to take you through the process of direct pay or onboarding or signing the affidavit or whatever your trouble may be. There are those two options there to watch a video or read an article and try to figure that out on your own. If you're feeling stumped or you're feeling like you would just really like to contact someone for some support, once you're logged in, there's this icon here. Again, I apologize, it's a little blurry, but you would see it down at the bottom of your screen and it says chat with an expert. So that's an opportunity for you to click on that tab and have a live chat with someone from ClassWallet in real time. This icon here with the circle with the graphic of the figure is accessibility tools. So if you need the screen to appear differently or in a different mode, or you need some accessibility adaptations, you can click on that button on the ClassWallet platform and you can transform your screen to be a little bit more user-friendly for you. ClassWallet also has an email. It's help@classwallet.com or a phone number, and they're available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time, which I think is a pretty nice window of customer support, in addition to having some Saturday hours as well from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So if you're trying to upload an invoice over the weekend and you're having some trouble, you can give them a call or shoot them an email during that time as well. So let's go through a couple of the steps of onboarding. So as I referenced earlier, once approved, a provider or a family can expect an email directly from ClassWallet, and that's going to have some specific onboarding instructions, as onboarding for providers is going to look a little bit different than onboarding for families. And for families only, they will need to sign an affidavit. So we've had some questions from families that said, I see what my account should be, but my balance is 0. Why is that? Typically, that's because they have not completed signing the affidavit. And ClassWallet has some step-by-step instructions on how you can access that affidavit and sign it even after your onboarding. So you need to make sure that you've completed all steps for registration. What we typically see on the provider side, where a provider may have been approved a month ago and received their information from ClassWallet and thought that they completed the process. But what ClassWallet does is it sends kind of a micro deposit. I believe it's around $5. And you need to confirm that you have received that micro deposit, and that way they know that there's a connection between your direct deposit. So that's usually the last step that trips some providers up, and that's the reason that they're not appearing to parents on the ClassWallet portal. So you really need to make sure that you've completed all the steps of onboarding for parents in order to have access to your account balance, and for providers to be seen on the ClassWallet platform so that families can upload their invoices and pay using ESA funds. Once that's finished, parents will have full access to their quarterly disbursement in their account. So remember, there's a total grant award amount that's dispersed in 4 quarterly disbursements throughout the year. 2 disbursements have already gone out to awardees. For providers, they'd be able to be seen on the list of all the approved providers for families to select to make payments to. So a little bit of a back step here. We want to make it really clear how parents can find providers, and then what the step is from the time that services begin through invoicing and payment. So let's walk through that really carefully. So first, we have an approved provider list, and that's published on the homepage of our website and updated twice a week. So as new providers are approved for ESA, their names are added to our approved provider list, and their information is sent over to ClassWallet within 24 business hours of being approved by our team. If a family does not see a provider on the list that they are hoping to use, whether that's a school or a therapist or an educational service provider, they can actually refer a provider for ESA staff to reach out and contact. And that can be done by filling out the provider contact form, and that's on the families page of the ESA website. Oftentimes families email us and say, I have this great school in my area, but I don't see them on the list, or we've been using this tutor for years, would love for them to become approved. So, families can't do that on their own, but they can refer that provider to us by using this form. We just ask for some simple contact information, like the business name, where they're located, and potentially contact person. And then our team can reach out internally and see if that provider would like to come on board and participate to accept ESA funds for payment of education-related services and therapies. Provider and family must agree that it's a good match. So providers are under no obligation, of course, to enroll or accept ESA students just because they're an ESA provider. It has to be a good match, both on the part of the student and on the part of the provider. So once that agreement has been made, services will begin. Once services are rendered, a provider will provide an invoice to the parent for those services. Now, where we're seeing a lot of providers get tripped up is that the invoice doesn't have all of the invoice components that it needs in order to be approved. And there's an asterisk there because I'm going to speak to that more in detail a little bit later in the presentation. But once that invoice is provided to the family, they're going to review the invoice. They're going to upload that invoice into the ClassWallet system and initiate payment. Again, which is a process I'm going to speak more to toward the end of the presentation. Each transaction is reviewed by an ESA account specialist. So we are looking to make sure that the invoice has all of those necessary components and that the amount paid matches the invoice amount. Once the transaction has settled and payment has settled into the provider's account, that provider is responsible for issuing receipt of payment to the parent to show, yes, this has been paid, we're good, we have our ESA funds deposited into our account, that is settled. So that can go directly from the provider to the parent. And again, want to draw your attention to the bottom of the page. More information can be found about the invoicing process in Chapter 8 of the Parent Handbook and Chapter 6 of the Provider Handbook. Let's talk a little bit more about what all of those invoice components are. And again, this can be found in Chapter 8 of the Parent Handbook, Chapter 6 of the Provider Handbook, and the Provider Handbook even has this exact template for you to review to make sure that you have all of the components. For the Parent Handbook, the components are listed out in Chapter 8. So first is going to be the eligible student's full legal first and last name and their student test number. What we've seen sometimes is that a student might go by a nickname. So a provider is invoicing to that nickname. We're going to need the first and last legal name there. So for any Office fans, you can see I've used a little bit of Office examples in my invoice here. The invoice is to student Dwight Schrute. I did not include an STN, but one could certainly be included under there. Next will be dates of service. So that's going to correlate over here. And that's very important, regardless of whether we're talking about tuition for an extended period of time, like a month or a semester, or a one-off therapy session or tutoring session. We're going to need the date of service because that confirms for us that the service has already been rendered. It's already taken place. So that's a very important component. And that could be a one-time date, as you'll see here, for example, 2 hours of ABA therapy on 5/13/22, or it could be a date range. So I'm invoicing on October 12th for tuition and fees from September 1 through September 30. Either is acceptable. We'll also need an invoice date, which you could see up at the top right corner here. And an itemized list of qualified expenses with a description. And this is where we've seen a lot of providers have the most difficulty because we're going to need some specifics included. So for instance, I've given a couple of examples here, 1 ABA therapy and 2 of math, of tutoring, 1 of math, 1 of science, specifically algebra and biology. So that is a sufficient amount of description. It can't just say educational services. It can't just say tutoring. We need a little bit more of a description about what type of tutoring or what type of educational service or what kind of therapy was provided during that time. That's one of those things that if in doubt, please feel free to email us with the description and say, will this be sufficient on my invoice? We are happy to answer those questions for you. That's going to be a little bit easier and probably more time effective than submitting an invoice that might not have all of the description that we need, having it be rejected and kind of going through that process of resubmitting. So when in doubt, please reach out and ask us. We're happy to kind of review that description to make sure that it's sufficient. So the 5th component, an important one, what's the total amount due? So you'll see here in my example, Dunder Mifflin Education and Therapy Center is invoicing for a couple of things that happened on 5/13. So they have a quantity here, a subtotal, and then a grand total down at the bottom. There also needs to be a payment due date, and that could be payment due upon receipt, or it could be a specific day. Either is acceptable. Now, here's another important one, and this is the final one, is the business name. So the business name or the individual provider name must match the name under which this provider applied to the ESA. So here you'll see the invoices for Dunder Mifflin Education and Therapy Center. So we're going to check and make sure that Dunder Mifflin is an approved business and that we have vetted. So what we're seeing is sometimes an individual provider may have an LLC they've applied as their own individual name, but then they're putting their LLC name on their invoices. So there's a mismatch there. An individual provider can absolutely apply with their LLC. We're just going to, collect additional documentation to vet that LLC, like an articles of incorporation. But the important point here is that there has to be a match between the business name on the invoice or the individual name on the invoice and the name of the person or the business that's applied to be approved through ESA. So ClassWallet has a feature called Direct Pay, and this is the only feature of ClassWallet that we're utilizing at Indiana ESA. And what Direct Pay is exactly what it sounds like, is that families are using their ESA funds in their account to pay that provider directly for direct deposit. This will be the only type of payment that families can make for the 22-23 school year. And invoices will not be approved for payments made to participating entity by other methods. So if a family pays out of pocket for a service and then they submit that paid invoice to us for potential reimbursement, we're not able to process that invoice because it's been paid already by other means. So this would have to be an invoice that has not yet been paid. So here is what the parent dashboard is going to look like when the parent is logged in. You'll see up at the top here, it says welcome student one, and that's because parents will have a toggle if they have multiple students in the ESA program or multiple students that have a ClassWallet account, and they'll be able to toggle between the accounts. It's important to note here that funds cannot be transferred from one student's account to another. So if student A is running low on funds, but student B has some additional services that are needed, we can't move funds from student A into student B's account. They are assigned to their own individual student. So to initiate the payment process, they're going to click on this button down here that says Pay Vendor. Now, there's two ways to do this. They can certainly select the Pay Vendor button down at the bottom of their dashboard, or what ClassWallet calls the hamburger. So the three little lines there, they can certainly click on that as well, which will create this drop-down menu, and Pay Vendor will be in a selection there. Step two, so once that's selected, you're going to see a list of the providers. So please note down here that the vendors listed above are not affiliated with Indiana ESA program. This is just a sample screenshot from some of the training and support tools available on ClassWallet. So if you're like, oh, I want to know where ABC of North Carolina is, it's in North Carolina. It's not in Indiana. But this is similar to the screen that you will see. So you can search a couple of different ways. You can search the list with predictive type, typing in right here where it says search vendors. So if you're looking for someone in particular, you can start typing your name. They should pop up. You can also click on the letter that corresponds alphabetically with the title of the business or the individual. Or you can use the scroll function to find the vendor that you're looking to select. And then you're going to click the Select Vendor button. You will then be asked to confirm. So you'll see this screen next that says, who do you want to pay? This will be the vendor that had been selected. If you clicked it in error, that's simple. You can just click change vendor. Or if this is the vendor that you meant to select, you can click next. Step three is where you're going to upload your invoice. So there's two ways to do this. You can drag and drop the image, or you can click browse and upload the image similar to how you've uploaded your documents for your ESA application. You just want to make sure that it's titled something that you'd be able to find later. Please remember, it does say on here, upload all your support documents, invoices, receipts, forms, etc. That because of Indiana ESA, reimbursements are not issued. A receipt of payment would not be an acceptable form of documentation. It would only be an invoice that would be allowable at this stage of the payment process. Next, you're going to enter the amount that you wish to pay to that participating entity. So this is, again, something that the account specialist will look to make sure match. So you'll see that the total down here is $375. The amount that the parent entered is $375. An important note here for families is that ClassWallet will not allow you to process a payment that exceeds the current balance in your ClassWallet account. So let's say, for example, that your quarterly disbursement was $1,000 and you have an invoice of $1,500 from a tutoring center. You would only be able to pay that tutoring center $1,000 of ESA funds. Even though a future disbursement will come, you will not be able to process any payment for an amount that's greater than the current balance. So that remaining balance would need to either be deferred if that's something that the provider is willing to do, or paid by alternate means. The next step is to choose the purse you'd like to use. Now, for Indiana ESA, you're only going to have one purse. It'll be called ESA Purse. It will even show you here what your available balance is as a reminder, but that will also be on the dashboard screen. As soon as you log in, you'll be able to see your available balance. A feature that ClassWallet has is that if an invoice is uploaded and the invoice has been approved, but the payment hasn't yet settled, ClassWallet will actually deduct that amount so that it doesn't appear as available funds. So that's kind of a nice feature. It allows you to not think that you're spending money that you don't have. You'll click Next. And then you just choose the category of the transaction. You can certainly choose multiple if you're not quite sure. You think that the qualified expenses fit into more than one category, but you must at least select one. And these correspond with the qualified expenses that we discussed earlier. So this one is just a sample from the ClassWallet website. Ours will be a little bit more precise and exact to the ESA program. You can certainly add comments or a description down here as well. And then the final step is a review on the part of the parent. So you want to make sure that you typed the correct amount, you've selected the correct vendor. Maybe you want to review the type of expense that you selected and any comments that you might have made before clicking Next, which is the submitted page. So you'll see an immediate visual confirmation that your invoice has been submitted for review by an ESA account specialist. And at that time, you can close down the screen and go ahead and upload a different invoice or exit ClassWallet altogether. So that's a little bit of an overview of the step-by-step process that parents will experience when they are uploading an invoice and initiating a payment to a provider. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the different types of statuses that you may see regarding your transaction. And that's, I think, important information for both families and providers. So if approved, payment will settle into a provider's account between 10 to 12 business days. So it's just a pretty quick 2-week turnaround. By the time it goes through our team, we vet it, we send the funds, and the funds are deposited into the provider's account. So that's the expectation. If it exceeds that amount, you can feel free to get in contact with us and say, hey, it's been 14, 15, 20 business days. I don't see something. We haven't seen that happen yet. All payments have been processed within this timeline, but if that does occur, please feel free to reach out and inquire about it. If an invoice is rejected, the parent will receive an email immediately with the reason for rejection. So I wanted to walk through a couple of the common reasons that we've had to reject invoices just to be proactive and prepared. First and foremost is an incomplete invoice. So an invoice is missing one or more components listed, and we will inform that parent of precisely which components are missed. Sometimes it's full legal name, sometimes it's dates of service, sometimes the services haven't occurred yet, or they occurred even previously to the family having an account. So maybe they were expenses from July. Only expenses from services rendered after August 18th, which was the date of the first disbursement, can be processed by the ESA team. The next thing, as I referenced earlier, is that the business name doesn't match the name of an approved provider on our side. So that could be another reason why the invoice was rejected. Or if the amount entered is incorrect. So maybe upon review, family missed it, they entered the wrong amount number. We're going to reject that and let them know that the paid amount does not match the invoice amount. That could certainly be because the parent didn't have the available funds, but usually it would be because of a transposition error. So we would send that back. So what are next steps if an invoice is rejected? If an invoice is rejected by an ESA account specialist, a parent must take the invoice and the reason for rejection back to the participating entity for revision. Obviously, a parent is not going to be able to revise the invoice themselves, but because they are the initiator of the payment, they're the ones that are going to get the reason for rejection. Once the invoice is updated by the participating entity to comply with ESA guidelines, it can be uploaded by the parent under a new transaction, and then we'll review it and either approve or provide additional feedback. And again, please feel free to email us at esa@tos.in.gov if you have any additional questions regarding rejection of an invoice. So maybe you have the reason, but it's unclear, or you thought that the description was sufficient. And again, we're happy to take those inquiries even before an invoice is submitted so that we can help to establish sufficient description for qualified expenses. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your attention. Here is some information for contacting us. We have email, which I referenced, esa@tos.in.gov. Please feel free to call us at 317-232-0723. That is our ESA line. You will reach somebody by calling that number. And please also feel free to follow us. We have a Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram account, and we have an informational YouTube series that is available for your review. So thank you again for participating in our first Food for Thought lunchtime informational session. We look forward to seeing you in November.